This is from Wolfpack 1977. He says, so who do you think will make the 26-man roster on opening day?
Most of the jobs are set, unless there's injuries. I think there'll be a fist fight to see who's the super utility man. I think that becomes an issue. Matt Carpenter, I think, will be, because he's a multi-position guy. He'll be the first utility guy. David Dahl, the ex-Colorado Rocky, who I like, but then had a bunch of injuries in Colorado and Arizona, has started out okay. I think he might be a guy that's going to wind up playing right field for the first group of games while Fernando Tatis finishes his suspension. I think we have to see what happens with Jose Azucar. He didn't hit all that well, but he's fast. He does play good defense, and they'll continue to grow him. He might be in the mix there. So I think the utility job thing is really the only job that they need 3 utility guys, the only positions that are going to be open that you probably need to pay attention to. Luis Campusano will be the backup catcher. The big question, will he be able to push his way into the starting lineup? So that, I think most all the jobs on the Padre roster are closed. And like I said, when camp opened last week, they had 9 potential starting pitchers. They have 9 potential relief pitchers. So that's going to have to sort itself out. There's injury factors with Musgrove. Is Pomerantz the same guy? So I don't think there's a lot of roster spots here. And I think the utility guys will play a role because you need them over a grind of 162 games.
What do you think about Roughneck Odor, getting signed by the Padres?
Odor is an ex-Texas Ranger. He might be in the mix, but he's more infielder than he is outfielder. But yeah, he might make it if he hits. But he only hit 201 last season. So I don't know if there's a big urgency to have a 201 hitter. He's not hit. He's bounced around a lot in the last group of years, but he'll be in that collective group, maybe trying to make it as a super utility guy behind Matt Carpenter.
Yeah. So just fascinating stuff with the Padres. But here's another great comment here. This is from M. Allen. He says, love the NHL talk franchise. No one covers the NHL like you.
We did it. We did it for a long, long time. I came from a hockey background before I wound up coming here to be in the National Football League as the voice of the Chargers and obviously do what I do on talk show. I love it. All you need to do is turn on TV and watch these games and watch these fans on these telecasts and how important hockey is to them in these markets. So they ever going to draw the TV numbers the NFL does? No, nobody does. Not even the soap operas of the world on television. But hockey's become a global game. It's a much better game since the gates were open and the Euros came on board. I swear to you, you go through these rosters, a third to half of every roster are players now from everywhere abroad. It's fascinating to see how many great players are in Scandinavia, the ones that are coming from Russia, etc. And then the importation of the U.S. kids. It's phenomenal how many Americans are playing and starring and being successful in the NHL. But we'll continue to cover it with all the big stories when it happens. We'll talk about it here on our podcast.
So how many years were you grinding in the NHL minor leagues, as a play-by-play broadcaster?
You never watched the movie Slapshot yet. You need to set aside some time and enjoy the movie Slapshot, because I spent 4 years in the lower minor leagues, and that's where Slapshot was filmed. And every facet of that movie is true because I lived that life. The boys on the bus, beer, babes, the whole 9 yards. And if you love hockey, you did it because it was the only way to get there. I heard a general manager tell me that he thinks every owner of a team should go spend some time riding a bus in the minor leagues to find out what it's like to be a young, aspiring hockey player and what they have to go through to play a full season. And I was in the Eastern Hockey League and the North American Hockey League, which was the lower leagues, and our travel was just horrible. That's another story for another time. But yeah, so I went from there and I went to the World Hockey Association, had a blast. And then after the merger of the NHL and the WHA, we got left out in Cleveland, and I wound up coming to Phoenix and then to San Diego to become an NFL play-by-play guy, and the rest of it's history. But I do like my puck.
Yeah, right on. Okay, let's move down the list here. We're going to try to get as many people involved as we can. This is from Manny N. He says, what should the Rams expect in a Jalen Ramsey trade?
He's a pretty good player. He's a pretty mouthy player, but he became last year, at least I thought, a very erratic player. They paid 2 number 1 draft picks to get him out of Jacksonville when the Jaguars are going through their fire sale. I don't think they're going to get 2 number 1s for Jalen Ramsey now. There's a cap figure crisis there. His cap figure is worth $12 million. I think if they could get a number one for him, but in all honesty, Maury, the problem is you trade Jalen Ramsey, maybe you're getting rid of a problem, but you trade Jalen Ramsey, you're creating another problem. Who's going to play cornerback for you? He is your best cover corner. It's a big issue that is complicated by cap issues and the fact they're still trying to restock their draft pick drawer. Everybody I talk to around the league says they think he's going to be traded.
Wow. I mean, just it's unbelievable what these teams have to do to get their roster in order
and balance it
and get prepared for the draft. I mean, these GMs are working overtime right now. Let's get a bunch of other folks here involved. And this is from Angie Neal. It'll be interesting to see if there is an increase with the number of stolen bases with the implementation of the pitching clock.
Oh, I have no doubt. I think it's going to rocket, and I think you'll see teams now maybe try to make roster moves to acquire guys with speed in addition to what they already have on their roster. I mean, just think of this. The pitcher on the mound has to pay attention to the pitch clock count behind home plate. He has to watch that runner, and then he has to be worried, do I make my pitch to the plate? Is this the one time out of the two times I can make a move to first base? And then it becomes a mind game for the pitcher in terms of his concentration. So to me, it's a big, big issue. And I think bringing the stolen base back into the game is going to be huge. And there's a subset angle to that story, is what we call the pizza box size of the bases with the new big bases.
Yeah.
That's going to give the runner more room to reach for the bag and not get tagged out. It's also going to be a safety factor. And I really believe it'll be a safety factor for the base runner going head first in. It'll be a safety factor for the fielder not getting blown out trying to make a double play pivot. So I think the increased size, we call them the pizza box bases, that's going to help change the game too. The running game is back. It's going to be good, just like they added the designated hitter last year, which I thought was great for the National League.
Yeah, right on. I'm looking forward to these changes. And I mean, think about how many plays at second base when they steal are like just inches, that tag can be on or off. Now it's going to be advantage runner. This is going to be really exciting.
On we go. Got a couple more questions here on Fans Forum.
A couple more, and let me go to some of the YouTube comments because we got some good ones here. And this is one about the Olympics that I thought was pretty interesting from Zest Riddle. He says, Olympics were to replace wars, so countries compete and fight against each other on the sports arena and not with actual swords and guns. Inviting a country that is participating in active aggression against another Olympic member is completely against that spirit.
Well, the spirit, though, has been damaged by politics forever and ever. I first became aware of the horrors of politics in the Olympics with the Munich Games and the kidnappings and the deaths and all that. We've always had politics on the periphery. I guess my heart says, because these athletes work so hard, and what it was, America boycotted was it Moscow Olympics under Jimmy Carter?
Yeah, 1980.
I felt so bad for all those athletes who had worked full 4 years to get qualified, go to the Olympics, and then can't go because of politics. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the IOC should ban the Russian and the Belarus athletes who are innocent victims. Do you ban them because they carry a Russian passport? They haven't done anything as it relates to Ukraine. It's a big issue. I think there's also an arguing point. Do you allow them to participate and not take part in the ceremonies? They don't have a flag to fly if you're not going to recognize Putin's Russian flag. But politics has always been part, sadly, of the Olympics, and I don't care what the ideology is. And the Olympics has also been stained by the ideology of greed. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I just don't know that we should ban these athletes because I think they're innocent victims of what somebody else in their country has done.
Yeah, I mean, people much smarter than me, they're going to have to make these decisions. You would hope that the Olympics can bring people together, but you can't be inviting warmongers to the table. It's a tough call that they're going to have to make. And to your point, you cannot, under any circumstances, penalize the athletes.
Okay, on we go. We'll sneak a couple more in here.
Okay, so let's just, all this talk about, Manny Machado and his contract. It's just been fascinating. This one's from IB Henriksen. He says, I honestly don't think he changes much had he signed with another team. There's something about San Diego that just transforms you into being a better person, unless you're Ryan Leaf.
Well, I will say this. Manny is different. He's changed. He's not the Manny Machado that I was told about to be wary of, or all the junk that he did in Baltimore. He's not the I'm not Johnny Hustle Manny Machado that ended his tenure with a firestorm of criticism. over his comments while he was a member of the Dodgers. He's become a very different player. Has he grown into it? I hope so. Peter Seidler has given him enormous amounts of money. Manny has praised Seidler, saying he's learned so much from him in his private conversations with him. I hope that's true. There's no doubt he's gifted. There's no doubt the game comes easy to him. There's no doubt that the guy's a grinder. I think 9 times in his career, he's played over 150 games in a season. John, that's a phenomenal amount of wear and tear. So he is the cornerstone of the team. I'm not ready to vote him Mr. Padre yet because that still goes to everything that Tony Gwynn was about as a player and as a person. I think if we're going to name anybody the next Mr. Padre, it might be Peter Seidler.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see if Manny can continue this. Put him under terms of an 11-year contract. That's an enormous amount of investment when the guy reaches beyond age 35. But he's changed. I think he's changed as a person, and I think that's really good for our baseball franchise.
Manny is the man, so I'm ecstatic for him with his new contract. All right, let's get another comment in here talking about Seidler, and this is from KB8SD, and he says, don't be surprised if at the trade deadline, AJ Preller unloads Jackson Merrill and other prospects not named Ethan Salas for an unhappy ace pitcher in Milwaukee, Corbin Burns, who just lost his arbitration case.
Well, there's multiple ways to look at this. The money is really spent. They're at $254 million, which is above that threshold. They're at $274 as the collective tax issue. They're going to wind up paying money on 3 different levels of the luxury tax. Somewhere along the way, you have to keep your players. You have to start keeping some of your young guys because you got a roster that's going to be compiling some age on it. To take on another contract, if you're Corbin Burns, you'd have to pay a steep price. Yeah, Jackson Merrill, etc. But to take on another $10 to $11 million contract on top of what you're already paying, I don't know. That is awful steep because you'd have to sign Burns next year to a contract, and you're still looking down the barrel of the gun of the whole Juan Soto situation within the next calendar year and a half. So I don't know if there's much more left in that checking account once we get to the trading deadline, but only time tells. And as John and I have talked, every year is really different. You recalibrate. You do hit the reset button there on the right-hand side that says, okay, you get rid of Blake Snell. You let him walk. You get rid of some other veterans. They walk. So you're taking some of that veteran money that you could reallocate somewhere else. That's a reset situation, probably for the trade deadline and for the offseason. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed our Thursday podcast.